Oh, no? Yeah. Welcome everybody. This is the three-man vision session for openType UI for FLOSS applications. We got Dave and Nathan here with me. I will. My role here is to be the moderator and try to steer the discussion in fruitful directions. What we're going to be doing here is a vision session, which is a discussion between Dave and Nathan, trying to answer three very simple questions that are quite tricky to answer. The first one is, what is this project? Not just the easy answer, which is the title of the project, but really, what is its identity? What is the extent? Can immediately thrown in that's going to be complicated because this is I see it as an infrastructure project, so we're going to be probing in that direction and see how far and unwieldy it goes. The second question is, who is this for? Which users of which classes of applications are we actually targeting this project at? And the third question is the most tricky one, where is the value? Not just we have to do this because we have to do this, because it's there, but really, yeah, what kind of impact are we looking for? That's the best way to phrase it in this part. And with infrastructure projects, it's quite difficult to get to it. Later on, when this question comes up, I will do a little bit more of an example from another piece of infrastructure that can show us, where you can really get to what is valuable about it. But I simply want to get us started right now. Also want to say I will be taking some notes. Procedure. I will take notes during the session of what I hear, what catches my ear, like, yeah, that's a little piece of gold. I have to write it down. Then we talk for as long as I think that we need to answer the three questions, and when I see that yeah, we're there, which is simply intuition, a feeling that I have, we're going to put the session on pause for a while, and I will write the vision, write it down in a couple of paragraphs, and then we're going to come back here and go through it, make some adjustments, and then we got this statement. From there on, it certainly will go past the Create community, the FLOSS LibreGraphics community. Can you say it like that? And but really, this meeting is about getting it done, getting to the heart of the matter. So at that point, I really would simply want to get started with the first question. Yeah, this project is called openType Features UI. That's the easy part, but what is it that we're trying to make here, and yeah, what's its identity? So, who wants to go first on just getting started somewhere?
I can throw a couple things out there.
And Nathan, you need to turn up your volume a little bit.
Okay, let me try.
Certainly to match.
Is that better?
If there's more, then it's very welcome. Let's see how many. I get about 3, up to 5 green lights, or 6 of them in my LED meter at the bottom when I talk here, when I speak. Sure, Dave also maxes out the.
Okay, is that better?
Marginally.
This is a tablet, and I'm not used to using it for Hangouts, so I apologize. I can at least get closer to the mic.
Well, then we just have to make do.
Okay. I'll use short words and enunciate. I think one of the key things that I feel like we should be working towards is consistency across applications, because I feel like any particular Floss application could do its own UI and provide access to the same features, but the user doesn't get value out of that if everyone does something different and compatible.
Mm.
So one of the goals, I think, would be to sort of sort out an approach that is useful to multiple projects, and I guess sort of a dependency that we get in from that is sort of figuring out how the various features are accessed in a document, which may not be the same for every feature.
Mm.
This is sort of like the document-wide versus paragraph-wide versus word-wide scope of different features, and having some clear discussion of that would probably help a lot of projects, because it seems like that doesn't exist in Floss or in proprietary software either. A breakdown, I guess, of how the features interact with a document when a user is creating it.
Let's see. I find it interesting because it's an idea that's really new to me. I've thought a little bit ahead that, of course, there's quite a bit of work in the handling or simply a huge variety in the scope that you actually set the features for, and this comes with text handling or object handling inside the document, which makes that you have to always think of this wide span of really setting the features for 3 characters in a row, or for the whole document, or for some kind of search, or for some kinds of classes. But how does it impact at this level? Do you mean from our side we should be providing, well, the maximum we can do is guidelines of how this should be handled, or do you think there's really
so one of the big there's 2 big document object model standards that are not the web, and those are the Office Open XML and the format rich text ISO standards. And as far as I know, I haven't looked at the latest Office. It's for Windows 10, but to date, until whatever that Office version is, Microsoft Office hasn't supported openType features in the user interface. The sort of platform APIs, have provided openType feature access, and Word's Visual Basic for Applications scripting layer allows you to turn openType features on and off for in some way. I've heard that, but the actual delivery of this as a user-facing feature has not happened. It may have only happened this year, although I actually haven't heard about it. So it may be that it still hasn't happened.
Mm.
I think Nate's right to surface this as a sort of one of the primary things that we would have to provide guidelines to, which is that half buzz is now absolute kind of has absolute parity with the Microsoft openType platform rendering, and so Libre applications now, Libre desktop applications now have the ability to integrate with half-buzz, and half-buzz is also used by both Firefox and Chrome, or Chromium. So, sort of irony is that Adobe's applications, Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, are using older, buggier OpenType processing libraries. And they actually don't have a unified system. There's different ones in OpenType and there's different ones in InDesign and Illustrator, and so the support across Adobe's apps is spotty. So this is something that Adobe is seeking to address. But the status is at the moment is that the free infrastructure for Libre graphics applications is more advanced than Adobe's. But Adobe's applications are the only ones that Surface System uses, and they do this, with a kind of very in a very minimal, viable way, where they just have one hierarchical menu off their typography palette that allows you to apply a feature to a given text span. But as Nate mentioned, there's no way to, it gets very complicated because that markup, that rich text markup saying this word or paragraph or document has this feature activated. The only way to ascertain that is to place the cursor or a selection somewhere and then go to that menu, drill down that menu, and see if it's an item is ticked or not. It's a farce basically, and it's been like that for about 15 years. So that issue of knowing what text a feature is being applied to is one of the sort of secondary user interface challenges that is essential. I mean, I'm not saying it's secondary as in it's a must-have, for something to be considered complete, and it's something which Adobe doesn't have, and that's been a big pain point for users. The primary thing is selecting the features and getting being able to query the font and say which features do you have, and then being able to expose those features to users in a sensible way. And the sort of implicit part of that is the selection. And so then the technical implication of that sort of selection is how do you tack on that metadata, that text metadata, to applications which may not have got support for it. So on the web, CSS is used for this kind of thing, and so the same way you set up CSS classes which have properties. There's a general font feature property which you can put arbitrary values in. So looking at those CSS3 OpenType feature specifications is probably relevant to this project. And then you just have these classes, and then you just apply those classes to the HTML elements in the typical way, as if it was color.
There's some really good stuff. You what you are telling us at the moment, Dave. Actually, I already have two notes here that go towards the topic, the hard topic that comes later, which is value. I can see that solving the problem of getting some kind of overview of what feature is applied where over a number of text objects or stretch of text, whatever, is goes really towards users' needs for knowing what on earth is actually going on. And the other one was to know what's available in font X. That is also, that goes towards things that are valuable to be
right. So
informed about.
the openType specification, is the authoritative source for enumerating all of the openType features that can be made available to users.
Mm.
And we have to imagine that there could be such a font that has everything. It's possible. It is theoretically possible for someone to make such a font that has every feature that there can be.
Mm.
And most fonts don't have all those features. They often just have just a few features. And so by going to the openType spec, you can get a list of all the features. Then those features probably have to be prioritized, and we could ask some designers who have large collections of some very substantial collections of fonts to enumerate and count the numbers of features in all of the fonts, so that we get a sort of absolute ranking where we would know that the majority of fonts have small caps and different lining numbers, old style numbers. Off the top of my head, I would say that those would be very common openType features. Then there's also, we could distinguish between automatic and manual features. So there are ligatures. A lot of the sort of language-specific openType stuff, is just essential for making text readable. And in Latin, there's a couple of these. So the ligatures, are sort of more just visual styling, although in cases they can also be important for legibility in some way. But they're not so essential. But nevertheless, there is this distinction between the stuff which is automatic and then the sort of discretionary optional stuff.
And that's actually really really important, or that's part actually of the definition of what we're doing here, what it is. Since I'm a little bit informed about the standard. I've read through some things. Immediately it strikes you as a lot of these things, like for non-Latin script, simply have to, it doesn't even make sense to switch them off, I would almost say. The Arabic doesn't work if you don't have these features switched on, all these substitutions and this moving around of strokes.
I think it may even be that you'd actually have to work quite hard to turn them off. I think the way that HalfBuzz presents this stuff is that some of the stuff is just mandatory, just how it is, and then some of it is optional. And of that optional stuff, there's stuff which is recommended. In a user interface, you could highlight and surface as being likely to be desirable to use. And then there's stuff which is simply there, and you can use it if you want to. And potentially there's stuff which could be there, but actually is is lowered in the priority because we think that you actually probably don't want to do this.
Well, one of the things, and I must tell you that is my experience with working on exactly this kind of infrastructure thing, is to exactly not work with priorities, but simply with have some logical segmentation of the whole thing. But it's not about where we are right now with the fonts, because if Adobe gets his act together and we get our act together, then openType usage will explode, because up to now it's been an uphill struggle to even use it, which means font designers really get interested more in supporting it. So I do expect as an effect, although there's quite a bit leading the witness, that you guys, that the impact that this work will have is really to, yeah, make this whole open-type features world into a grown-up one, how do you say, mature one, instead of yeah, having this marginal existence up to now in Adobe applications, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought I'd just share this image that Lawrence Penny posted on Facebook. I thought it was very funny. It's you know, it's a pub garden signage. You know, you can see there's a bit of bird poo on there, and you know, the script
We're
font.
not seeing it yet. You are sharing with us, are you? Yeah.
Yeah. You might have to click on my icon.
The content is not down the wire yet, but let me take a.
I'm using my imagination though, Dave. Go on.
Just describe it while we're waiting for it.
Yeah, so it's using a sort of, you know, script type, and the script type has got what's called kind of swash forms, and so these are intended for use, you know, at the beginning or the ends of the words, and the designer, you know, has applied this open-type feature, and, you know, not really thought about it, and so there's letter forms which have got their final forms in the middle of the word. It's very peculiar. I can put the link on the Hangout also. So you guys see it.
Yeah, let's see. I clicked on it and.
Let me try again with the entire screen. Are you seeing it now?
Correcting now.
Seeing something. Oh yeah.
You got it?
Right.
Ah, yeah. Okay, that's.
And so it almost makes signage illegible.
Yeah, it's really going to that. It is eligible if, well, marginally.
Yeah, I mean the S, you know, the S in the past times, I think, you know, for non-native readers could really, you know, become illegible there. So yeah, I think that's.
Let that be a warning. Let's put it that way.
He'll be back. He raised a good point already, which I hadn't really thought about, the fact that we do need to, that there are UI considerations with showing in a document which features have already been activated. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, and it goes. It goes. We can in a little while talk about where it goes toward the needs of this. So Dave's back. Meanwhile, I've taken some notes again. I mean, it's important as part of the definition what the project is that, like, yeah, all the automatic, mandatory, etc. stuff is excluded. It's all about what the standard can say that that can be chosen by users to be turned on and off. That is really part of the scope of this project. Maybe need to find a nice term for it. Is this called what? Discretionary, or what does Adobe call it, or Microsoft?
Discretionary isn't quite the right word, because actually there's a specific feature called discretionary ligature. I guess optional might be the most obvious.
Optional seems to be what they use on the web.
Okay. Optional features. Which,
yeah.
Of course, the default ones that may be turned off are also part of it. I mean, if standard ligatures are getting in the way because you get everything very widely spaced, then you have to turn them off, basically. I think a typographer would immediately see that FI, the standard one, needs to become an F and an I again.
Right. Right. So there's the mandatory ones, the required ones. There's the default ones. Then there's the optional ones, and then there's potentially stuff which is, I don't know. There's deprecated features because there's basically there was a lot of mistakes made in and there's new, you've got MAML for Malayalam, and then you've got MLM2 for the second version.
Uh-huh.
Most of those are the language or the script specific shaping features, though. It's my impression. Like, there's a lot of Japanese related features that have been deprecated. Not so much in Latin, though. Is that right?
No, I don't think so. I think the Latin stuff's been fairly stable. I think there was a few things that were deprecated, but they were deprecated very early, so there's just not many fonts in the wild. But that is a point, though, that the openType spec has evolved over time, and there are fonts in the wild which use older versions, and so it's not just the current spec, but it's all the versions of the spec that need to be taken into account.
So that's a good warning. And
so actually, sorry, I missed something. So something I wanted to say was that I understood the first question, the first topic that we are discussing here is, what is it that we're doing? And so I'm trying to throw out ideas about a sort of structural analysis of the problem space.
No, it's really on the level of what it is. Like, we know, and I'll lead the witness a little bit, we know what we're making is coupled to Harvbus. We can maybe talk about that in a moment. And yeah, it's a module that's going to turn up because what Nate says, we want this to have some sort of consistency across applications. It's a module, it's a framework, it's a set of tools and guidelines and I don't know what to allow applications who know their domain to really make offer openType features in a way that really suits them, which also have to do with where they have to build it into their applications and where it's going to fit in their GUIs
right.
As I've already noted in mine.
It's sort of like it's developing something like the human interface guidelines, that Apple famously had, and that I guess KDE also has, and so and material design, Google now, iOS also has these kind of things. So having this kind of interaction design guidelines for applications that wish to which are integrating Harvbus in their rich text and want to expose Harvbus's features to.
And of course, Harvbus has to support with just code and queries and delivering data structures with like available features, etc., for font X and Y. All this kind of font bookkeeping and doing the shaping at the end, of course. Just offer that as something that goes hand in glove with the actual rules or patterns that this will actually be.
So I guess maybe one potential place for this to end up is in the Harvbus documentation. This would become part of the Harvbus project, and I think there is like harvbus.org, and it would live there or whatever.
I was going to ask, actually, on that point, is it enough for us, do you think it's enough for us to come up with a HIG-like document, or do we want to come up with example code, or at least pseudocode for GTK, Qt, something like that? I can see that going either way. It's a lot more work to come up with working code examples, but that might also be something that's best left up to those toolkit projects, and we could certainly encourage them to work on that.
Yeah, luckily we don't have to answer it right now. I mean, it can be taken step by step. There's this module, it's gonna basically answer the openType specific or openType specific questions that are not domain specific for these people, and make some clear choices there. It's going to have best practice patterns of how to represent it, how to combine it with selecting text or even having styles, etc. And that is the basic deliverable or the first level. On top of that can be built, because there's going to be some designed by me standard solutions, how to fit it in a variety of, especially when it is about how much screen size do you have available to control this, horizontal layouts, vertical layouts, something that pops up, etc. I will make example designs for that, so that people have something that they can almost touch. And first of all, that's still documentation, it's just design, but if somebody wants to implement this standard layout for other people to use in Qt or on the GTK side, then that's of course, then the real standard solutions start to be, it's just one software object away. But this is not necessary for us to do all this before it's finished. I mean, it starts with solving the overall problem and making out of what I say, it's still a thing of 10,000 use cases. It cannot be solved by looking at a few documents and saying that's how it works. That has to be solved in the beginning. That makes it a clear-cut system where, there's 12 choices you have to make, but then you can start really feeling like you know what you're up for, you know what's implemented, you know that it is already supported by Harvbus, so you can build on that. And it starts to be a feasible project for application XYZ to really start building this in, instead of this mass where, it's this rainforest of possibilities and problems that's coming at you. This huge unwielding sprawl that you then have to deal with. So the first step is making this unwieldy problem into one that has a few clear-cut solutions, one of which is going to be real close to what everybody needs for their own circumstances, and they can take it from there. What you say, the consistency across application cannot be so strict that everybody feels like they have something they cannot work with. So it needs to have a certain, with a nice word, polymorphism, this thing to adapt to all kinds of circumstances. But then again, it needs to be, and I think it's important to play this card, because it can be played at this moment, that Floss has solved this better than Adobe. Because we're actually starting from zero here, so there's no legacy, there is no infighting between different solutions from different teams at this moment, because it's a green field. We don't have to tear anything down here to do that, and this is really cool actually, the fact that it really evolves around Harvbus is that effect of centralization that is there. And yeah, Harvbus is simply the offer to take care of all that shaping and all that rendering fonts based on the choices that are given for the openType features. It's
there were some different libraries, and they were unified into Harvbus. So God, led that kind of unification work a few years ago, which is the Pango, the K-shaper. I believe have been started by some other folks in the very early GNOME community, and the regard was considered the theory. The Qt guys had forked it, and he led the unification of that.
Mm.
And with HalfBuzz to sort of rewrite from scratch version 2.0, and has made HalfBuzz absolutely world class. So is it clear, the first question?
Mm. I actually, in the meanwhile, wrote down that if you look at the identity of what we're doing at the moment, this is just brainstorming. It's like what this project is effectively is offering, is a set of solutions, which is where the flexibility comes in, but with the aim of that this is going to be more, or is going to be handled consistent across applications. I just want to now, not that we finished with the first question, but I simply want to move on so that we can liberate our mind on the first one again. Just go to the second question, because it's starting to get really interesting by asking who is this for. We can look at certain, and since its infrastructure is going to be big groups of users, or look at certain classes of applications. And what of course immediately comes up is like, is this for advanced applications, so typographers and graphics, or is this for a lot, because Office has already been, so of course we're looking, the question is this for LibreOffice also?
My instinct on that is to say, yes, it's for general purpose Office type applications too, because of situations like the one you mentioned with ligatures that you need to turn off if you change your spacing. I've seen that happen in LibreOffice presentations where, in fact, at Guadec this year, there were a couple where the FI ligature stayed in place when the word spacing was really spread out, and that was really cool. So the status quo today may be that LibreOffice users don't care much about openType features, but that stems from the fact that they don't know much about openType features. But there are situations like the one you mentioned where it becomes important. So I think it would be too limiting to say we only care about high-end applications for graphic designers alone.
Dave, you got?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that we ought to be I think framing this in terms of any rich text. That anywhere where you have plain text where the font is set by the editor and is just what it is, and then you have rich text environments which typically allow you to select any typeface that's available to the application, and bold, italic, and increasingly that is not sufficient. That really rich text allows you to select any of the weights in the family, potentially any of the widths, and that these fonts come with openType features. And if you're trying to recreate a piece of text you've seen somewhere else, then you'll need to have access to everything. And this, to me, has to be aiming to make openType as universal as the font choice. That if you're going to use a font, then you need to access the openType features. There's simply no two ways about it. You have an example of a font here. Let me just pull this up. So I have here an example called Bungee, which is an unreleased font. It's by Font Bureau, who are known for their technical innovation in typography. And this uses the Japanese openType features, the vertical text setting. And so you can see, where it says spin cycle, that's like a regular Roman font. And then it has, special sets, a special variation of the design that's made specifically for, vertical typesetting. And this is built into openType. openType supports that stuff. because it's necessary for setting vertical Japanese text and you know and other Mongolian and other vertical scripts.
Mm. As a note, this is what I meant before, that this, I think it's super important, but it's part of my doing my job seriously, is that I'm gonna make no assumptions anymore, like what people use, especially the stylistic sets, which is just an open invitation to put any kind of changes in. What people are going to be using it for. It is not quite a programming language that we have here, but the possibilities are only limited by what you can do within a font, but what still makes sense as a font.
And then the other thing is that now the openType certification, has standardized these color font formats.
Mm.
And so Firefox is shipping support for this, for a while, and the other browsers will eventually ship it as well. And these color font formats have come about because of emoji, which is also, actually Unicode text. And so, you can copy and paste a Unicode emoji character, and it's, meant to have color. There are, of course, black and white fonts for text environments which don't support color, but not have a character not found empty square box for every emoji. So I think that anywhere where you have rich text, you can select a font family. You can certainly have bold and italic, and you can probably set color of the text. And so, actually modern rich text goes beyond that to allow openType features and color fonts, and the colors in color font can be user configurable.
Mm. I guess in the font itself is simply mapped which areas or which outlines are filled with which color from an index of colors or something like that.
Yeah, and then you just you rewrite the index. Mm-hmm.
Mm. So okay,
So the on the high end, we have Scribus, we have Inkscape, we have GIMP. Is that kind of trinity of DTP, illustration, and photography, which is the sort of core of graphic design. Text, image, and illustration.
Mm.
And all of them, including the GIMP, have rich text tools. That you can set text. In either of those tools, and you have a slightly more advanced class of user who maybe sort of adept or an expert with design. As Peter said, in the LDM, they may not be professionals, but they have some kind of expertise.
Mm.
So supporting them, I think, is important, and that's where maybe we can assume a bit more familiarity with the openType specification. But in general, I think most users don't have any familiarity with the spec, and the existing implementations of openType stuff are often very close to the specification. And they say, well, if you don't understand it, read the file format specification, and then it will make sense.
Yeah. I do feel that, I know I cannot stop to that what we call general text use is also part of this project. Up to now, hope to avoid it, but I see it's impossible. I do think that it will be like a two-class society of people who really know what they're doing and have to work with it fast and furious. And where Dave, you're staying with us, no? Not quite. He's bringing us somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm just going
to... Okay. And a more general audience that really has to be even presented it in another way, and it all goes at a little bit slower pace and can take more of the screen because can concentrate really on it for a moment.
Question about that though, it seems like breaking down the classes of users like that is sort of a step away, or is that sort of a step away from what we're doing, because the first consumers of what we produce will be the developers. So the developers working on Scribus or Inkscape are going to be concerned about, and presumably they're going to be concerned about casual users and expert users too. But if we produce something that is also picked up by gedit or some less high-end application, the developers may decide very little of it applies to them.
Well, in a way, like, let's say, first of all, I can see how, just like actually on Mac, how certain typographical features are made available everywhere just by putting it in standard font dialog. I can accept that access to openType features for the general public is a good thing, and as soon as we say it's a good thing, then I think we have the obligation to basically again provide a set of solutions for that class of use. I also immediately know that the needs of general users are going to be sometimes contradictory to those of professional or masters in graphics or typography. So especially how they use, how complex it is that they can deal with things, how fast and furious they work with it is going to be a really a different kettle of fish. So since in this system there will be, for certain classes of what the applications are organized like, basically the solution set that we offer will already be partitioned into certain classes. And it may just have to do with, here's a vertical layout, here's a horizontal layout. Then having some more class differentiation by saying, this is for pro typographer and graphics people, and this one is a solution for integrating it for general computer users who want to have access to these features, for which it would at some point be maybe even advantageous if the people of GNOME and KDE centrally got on board with it. But we have to make the first step. We have to show what the solution looks like, so there can be any traction. Really become our obligation to deal with that. There's no one solution that can satisfy everybody. It's the same as why a simple text editor is something really different than Scribus or InDesign, basically. It all deals with text and putting it on a page, but it's a really different focus that is there. And maybe we get lucky. Maybe after first.
Why do you think there's a difference?
I think there will always be a difference on the level of expertise with this. And as I said, like I said, professional work or master in graphics or typography. It's a lot about the speed that people work with it. So I would look, or I know that I have to design it around a different setup.
Sure.
When you're talking about general use, then you can really do this in a slower pace, putting up a big dialogue, maybe even take some time to, or a little bit of hints to explain what the features are, or show them from the information of the font itself what is available in a much bigger and more generous way to do a little bit more hand-holding that on the professional side would not be needed at all. It's really about, yeah, a drill is not a drill is a drill. There are consumer drills and there are drills for professionals, and those are built in a different way. I said while you were interrupting, we may get lucky that it all converges to the same user interface, because it turns out that the same mechanisms work brilliant for both, or very well for both. At that moment, I'm really happy to just integrate all of it and make the class difference disappear there.
Yeah, and that's
Okay. Well, I mean, so I think I'm happy if you wanted to kind of make it first and second class, and say that there's like LibreOffice user and there's Inkscape user. I'm happy to approach it in two rounds and make two passes, and it's sort of up to us, I guess, about which one to prioritize, or if they have to be done together, or whatever. But I think that the kind of thing that you mentioned, having additional prompting, contextual information, is basically something that is optional, and that even all designers are using LibreOffice all the time to do stuff, and making slide decks. I mean, every office worker makes slide decks to present ideas, including people who have a lot of sophisticated typographic knowledge and that use desktop publishing programs. So I think saying that for users who are who don't have that sophisticated knowledge, having additional prompting in the interface is very valuable, or being able to preview what things would be like. If you have a text span selected and then you go to the openType features UI, being able to preview the things with the selections text sounds great. But I don't see that as being for beginners and not for advanced users. You could say that advanced users need to move quickly through the system, but I'm not sure that having additional contextual information is necessarily a speed block. Additionally, the users of these advanced applications often don't know anything about openType because there hasn't been a user interface for it. And even though they may know this kind of thing, a lot of font designers offer kind of flat fonts where the openType features are sort of stripped out one by one and replaced, the lowercase glyphs with the stylistic sets or the small caps. And certainly, on Google Web Fonts, then I did that for small caps, where browsers didn't support openType features 5 years ago. So we have, a few dozen SC fonts, which are small cap fonts, and so you have Merriweather SC, and it's the small caps. And sort of, SC is, from, in the old days when there were file name limits and abbreviations and that kind of thing, and it's not Merriweather small caps to make it a bit more pro, so it's not immediately obvious. So I think that a lot of users of these pro applications don't know about this stuff, and they are as likely to benefit from that prompting information as someone who is familiar with all this stuff, who happens to be using LibreOffice to present their work.
But I think we need to. It's good we talked around about this. Doubts here. Also, on my side is like, well, it can be like this, can be like that. But it will be part of the further design process to actually see. I mean, ideally, it's just one interface, but I've shown this at LibreGraphics. The difference between the rally car and the family car may also really apply at this level of using things, and it's also about how fast can you go once you get into it. And the family car simply has a speed limit. because of the ballast that it's carrying.
Well, I think you know I'm recommending that this is a family car project, and that even in these kind of pro applications like Scribus, the fact is that lithographics tools are generally not used by professionals who really know what they're doing. They're made by people who can't afford proprietary software, and I think that for the sort of the positioning of openType in the kind of utility hierarchy of software, that accepting that speed limit for the trade-off of reaching more users is entirely aligned with the project's goals.
Mm.
And that if you wanted to make the rally car version, then it would be a follow-on project. And that if we're going to split it, then we can split it. But then there's a question of which is do we do both together, or does one take priority? And I think the family car has to take the priority.
I think I agree there. I was thinking earlier in the discussion that one of the reasons I think that a lot of Floss applications don't have openType feature support is just that the developers don't know what openType features are and how they're related to each other, and that indicates to me that they need a family car before they can get a rally car.
Mm.
Well, yeah, and in terms of people said who is this for? We could think of it in terms of users and in terms of that. And I would say that the absolute primary user was LibreOffice, because that has significantly more users than any other Libre application. It's extremely widely deployed. There are several companies that are profitable developing LibreOffice. There's a lot of big deployments of big organizations which are not very public because those organizations don't want to make a big fuss about it because Microsoft doesn't always play fair, and often they continue being Microsoft customers to a lesser extent than they would otherwise be because they can give LibreOffice to their less demanding users.
Yeah, you really need to inform me a little bit, because I'm just now thinking, like, where did the outcry come from that Adobe was so bad? Of course, it's from Adobe, core Adobe users, which are, for us, for better or for worse, in the pro class. I mean,
oh yeah, and also
if they are used to openType anyway, they want to use it, and they're now hindered. They buy a font and they cannot even apply the feature because Photoshop doesn't support all the options, or different options than InDesign does.
Right. And also that petition only got like 5,000 signatures. Adobe's got a lot more users, and so it's a drop in the ocean. And that's why Adobe hasn't moved on it, because their product managers very rationally say, when you have 50,000 signatures, when you have 500,000 signatures, then we can talk, because I've got this long list of features which I've got 5 million people signed up to as very important, and 5,000 is just a drop in the ocean. So I think that the idea of this being sort of a rich text thing, that there's many applications that offer users the ability to pick fonts, and those are those obviously for the free desktop is GTK Qt, but also increasingly on the web, and there's a all of, with the exception of Google Fonts, all of the big web font services tout the inclusion of openType features and the wide browser support, except for Safari, of openType features as a major selling point of their service, because it was a point of differentiation for some of the earlier ones. And this idea about thinking about the scale of things, there's a great slide deck on Andrew Howitz's SlideShare the number of desktops and the number of mobile and tablets, and the of total computer users, desktop is becoming like a small fraction. So I think that if we're going to make a sort of human interface guidelines for open-type features for rich text environments, then the big guns are the office authoring environments. But the second class is not even the design applications; it's any application where the user can pick a font and choose bold or italic. And so there's within open-type features, there's having multiple weights, there's having multiple scripts, and there's these features, and having support for that in web applications, in mobile, iOS, Android applications. That's potentially where there's a lot of money in app development, and so I'm sure that we could find a dozen rich text editor applications which don't handle this very well at the moment, and that could sponsor the development of this project.
But would they really care so much? That's one of the, apart from the automatic stuff that they really love, of course, they want to display Arabic and all kinds of Asian scripts.
Monotype is potentially a primary sponsor because they have a substantial windfall where if more applications support open-type features, they can sell at higher premium proprietary fonts.
Now there I got the printing experience of all the printer manufacturing saying, oh, Linux, 2% market, goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really hard, but it was true from their perspective. It's like, this is all cost, why would we on earth bother? Windows.
Why I think that, mobile, Android is a free software platform nominally. The web is a free platform, the leading web engines are free software. And there's a lot of web app developers that provide rich text authoring environments, even WordPress, blogging systems.
So at this moment, I would like, I need a short break. So,
yeah, I need to go in 15 minutes for about half an hour.
Okay. Then actually, this was actually a little bit predictable that this would get unwieldy on this level already now. But I think it's very good because I am getting new perspectives here. And this needs maybe a little bit of thinking. So how about if we maybe after talking a little bit, we call it quits for part 1 now and continue at another date? Would that, because we still got quite a bit to talk about. I know there's several loose ends, and I think we cannot rush that in the next half an hour or something. I don't think we can get closure on the conversation here at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, and maybe the best thing is to round it up here at this moment, report on the create list where we are with the discussion, even with the arguments, and see if anybody cares. And then we continue via this channel via session number 2, basically on this.
Yeah, I can do that. I don't have any travel coming up for close to a month, so I should be available.
Then maybe we schedule something for next week again to talk about this. Yeah, it's getting basically the turns that it's taking at this moment is that it's by becoming much more general purpose. We are exactly in this where we've been before a couple of times, which is the land of infrastructure. It becomes street lights for everybody instead of specialized lamps for designers, and it changes the complexity of it, and but also as what Dave is illustrating, like who's interested of this, who can really get, how you say, bothered about this, who can really get warm and cold about what we're doing here. The old idea I had was really that, yeah, all the pro applications, they must care. I mean, it's a competition thing at that level. It gets more interesting when the model Dave is talking about, like rich text editors, and I'm writing my notes in a rich text editor right now, so you know, simple, couple of choices, etc. But I can also do tracking and kerning in here if I want to, because it's available by the general typography interface. Yeah, then it becomes interesting as in who can really, and maybe just to close off now, we can talk a little bit about that before Dave has to go and we round this off. Who can get really interested in this to the point of, first of all, implementing them themselves, and that's already the first barrier of entry, is like, when we do all the work, will they implement it by themselves? But also, like Dave says, who can support us really in this, like financially, for instance, in doing this. So Dave, are you still with us? Can you maybe say?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Really what I was asking, like, yeah, in this much more general group, who you think web browsers and text editing in general can get really so yeah, heated about this, have to the point where they want to get actively involved or even can support us in this?
Well, I don't know that web browsers would do it. What I rather meant was that the web as a application platform. That there's, you know, so looking, you know, specifically at monotype. Let me see here. So if you go to any Google font specimen, there's a link to Typecast, and Typecast was a startup out of Ireland which Monotype acquired maybe 2 years ago. It's actually kind of very disappointing. It's kind of typical acqui-hire thing where they acquired the startup and then the development of the application appeared to stop. I'm not sure if that's totally fair. Maybe they have continued to improve it. It's I posted the link into the Hangout. Typecast.com/preview/Google/Bitter. And this is essentially very close to InDesign. It's a typesetting environment that gives you a really nice interface for setting up text design and doing very text-heavy document design. And Monotype bought that, and I think that this may have if you select some text there. I can't see that it supports any openType features. There's bold, there's italic. I can select some text. I can turn on bold and italic. I've got text effects, text transform. Yeah, so I've got small caps, lowercase, and that's using fake stuff. But yeah, it looks like this doesn't have any openType features. And it's a very that's a real rich text environment for designing with. Then there's on the free software side, there was a very nice web application called Hot Glue, and this is a sort of wiki, like rich text wiki interface. And there's a demo link on the sidebar there, hotglue.me/demo. And you have these elements. You can select them. You can double-click on a piece of the background, and you get these new tools to create stuff. So let's create a new page. and then we've got a completely blank page. We can insert some text here. We can insert a title for the page. Let's see. Okay, so then I've got a text block, and I can set some text inputs. And there's a button for toggling through italic, bold, bold, italic. There's a button for setting the text, the tracking, the alignment. I don't see anywhere to actually set the font and the size I can set. How do I actually set the font? I don't appear to be able to do so. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure that this is a funded project. WordPress I mentioned. There's lots of content management systems. There's public, free software. Some which are commercial free software. There's also proprietary content management systems. So yeah, so the web is this, has a more publishing aspect to it. So the use of rich text is more relevant there. But even I think that there's video editors. Video editing, CAD graphics. Those are very expensive proprietary software, and if they want to like fonts, they can use the Half-Buzz library to do so. It's LGPL licensed. I think it may even be permissively licensed, so that they are able to, proprietary developers are able to integrate the library and gain open-type features. So I think doing a kind of survey of leading proprietary software and looking for those alignments and getting them to fund this development is that's what I would do.
Yeah, I was just using the funding as a asset test for, are they really going to care? Which at the end they will look through the eyes of their own users in a marketing or in a product kind of way, like how many of our users are really, 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 I mean, for quite a bit you're talking here about typographical niceties.
Yeah.
And extra features of a font. Yeah. I mean, it's not for nothing that we stuck with capital monospace numbers on our normal fonts, because nobody cared, and that's the main use, is tables and spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So they align, and
so the big, Adobe, Microsoft, I think they're unlikely to, Google are unlikely to. I mean, certainly it's possible. But I think that the biggest companies are going to do this kind of thing in house. They're going to want a communal solution. But I think that there's a lot of other software companies which don't want to think about this, but that can see value if it was easy. And there's a competitive advantage to them having access to this before other people. So you could do it on a timeout method where it's, the work is done with the sponsors, with their engagement, so they get what they want, and they have early access to it. And there's certainly a lot of, I think there may even be enough commercial free software that could potentially.
Now, to stress again, the whole question about who would be bothered enough is really. For me to get to, for who does it make sense to even make the effort of implementing this, because we're now saying like, oh, we're doing this for quote unquote everybody, but and I think we want to think about this during the next days while we're not talking.
There's a guy, I forget what they're called. There's a company that develops LibreOffice commercially. I think Michael Meeks is there. Who was he's one of the main leaders of LibreOffice. Was at Novell for a long time, and I know they have some people in Berlin that you can meet, and they are commercially deploying LibreOffice,
So Dave, the whole point was not about who can give me money to do this or how's money to do this. It was about where, if you casting the net to say this is for everybody, I really wanted to check like how many of users are really gonna, are going to be into what is basically typographical refinement.
Sure. Well, actually, my number one.
That's what I was fishing for, because I want to get a grasp on, when it is like who we're making it for.
Well, I think the iFont sells a lot of fonts to the general public, and that font is a huge site that the general public goes to, not professional designers. And I think LibreOffice, they have people who are developing that commercially are very engaged with their users. They have been improving the design of LibreOffice. They could probably run a survey, on their customers to find out what the interest is for this. Yeah, I think my recommendation is to think about this as a LibreOffice effort. Okay, so I've got to run. So it was great. And I look forward to the reschedule.
Thank you, Dave.
All right. Take care.
So with Dave off, we're going to wrap it off for this session.
Okay.
We've learned that it's all a bit more complicated than we thought it would be, which comes with the territory in a way.
Yeah.
But it's going to take 1 or 2 more sessions to get here to the essence and rounded question or rounded answers or coherent answers to my questions. So I'm going to stop the broadcast here and see you all back for part 2 in a couple of days. Thanks also to Nathan.
Thanks.
And see you next time.